Hi, I'm Tyler, and this is Persuasive Speech, and this is my audience. Most of us grew up learning about the dangers of smoking. Through school programs or parents, many were steered away from the cancerous addiction, but there are still those among us that choose to smoke. Whether they're older, younger, our age, any age, it's still a problem in our society, and one that I believe needs to be stopped. Many argue that the choice to smoke is their own prerogative, but I would argue that this is not only harmful to themselves, but to their friends, families, and even those that they don't know. I'd like to appeal to the friends and families of smokers specifically today to educate those who do smoke and to begin the process towards a smoke-free lifestyle. Since the 1940s, we've learned about the problems with cigarettes and all the cancers and other health problems that can appear. But nearly 80 years later, still over 36 million Americans habitually smoke tobacco, according to the CDC. At 1.5 million deaths a year due to lung cancer alone, this epidemic is getting out of control, and if nothing is done, it's projected to grow. As members of society, I believe it's important that we educate everyone about the problems with smoking and smoking for the person themselves and for those around them. Secondhand smoke is one of the major problems faced by society today, and although in Louisiana specifically it's illegal to smoke in restaurants and any workplace, at parks and other just events, smoking is a common theme and can still harm children and everyone else around, whether they choose to be around the smoker or not. For children, decreased lung growth, higher tendency to contract bronchitis and pneumonia, as well as other symptoms that are usually just seen in smokers, are very prominent. Asthma, children with asthma also can have more frequent asthma attacks, and they can be worse and continue to get worse as they're around smokers. And this isn't just if it's a one-time thing. It's usually from parents or grandparents that have been in the habit of smoking, and even since they were young, they just did it around the house and around kids, whether they chose or they knew the effects or not. Secondhand smoking has even caused 34 premature deaths in non-smokers from heart disease alone, and that's just in the U.S. and for the past year, which is tragic, seeing as that's just heart disease, not lung cancer or any other problems that come from smoking. It's really sad to see a kid cough and wheeze just because their grandparents don't have the willpower, the desire sometimes to quit smoking. And people don't understand sometimes that it is an addiction. It's something that your body gets programmed and it becomes dependent on. But there are ways to stop. One of those is the nicotine patches or gum. Especially for older people, they find this easier because it supplements the nicotine that has become addictive. And in Louisiana specifically, there are programs such as the nicotine replacement group that will help pay for nicotine supplements, so you don't have to fork that cost up by yourself. It also has incentives such as support groups that meet weekly, and those are all free in Louisiana. Other states have policies, and most have websites that are really informative. A lot of the information from this I found out from Louisiana's website, and they have connections to groups in almost every major city and anywhere close to any city in Louisiana. The government support groups, they've definitely made a difference. The decrease in the number of smokers in our society has gone down over the years and continues to decrease. But the young people that smoke in our, especially in Louisiana, have gone up. People believe that this can also be attributed to e-cigarettes and things like that aren't as harmful. Vape also has nicotine in it, but it's not necessarily seen as a bad thing. But it does have nicotine and can cause addiction to that. It's also to clear. It's also important to see the effects on the environment. Many people, if you've ever been to a park or just are walking around the street, you'll see cigarette butts just on the ground. It's clear that this is not a good thing. It it decreases the property value of wherever you're at. By a home, it can decrease the property value up to 7%, which may not seem like a big number, but it can be a lot. If you think about buying and selling within 10 years, you can lose a lot of money just by having cigarette butts around the house or driveways. And the cigarette litter rate is actually at 65%, which means out of every 100 cigarettes, 65 end up on the ground, which is kind of depressing, seeing that there's 36 million Americans who habitually smoke. That's quite a lot of litter just from the cigarette butts alone. A problem that we see, or that the government has seen with this, is that cigarette smokers don't see cigarette butts as litter. Since a lot of them are biodegradable, the filters are biodegradable, they think it's not going to be a problem, that they're done, they can throw it on the ground, whether they're in a park, which I work at Lincoln Parish Park, and we see a lot of cigarette butts just thrown on the ground, and they're at a beautiful state or a parish-funded park. But those can cause problems, especially if there's wildlife around, such as ducks or squirrels, rabbits. Some of them will pick up and eat the cigarette butts, and they can choke. Sometimes there's no effect. Sometimes there's long-term. They can cause health problems for them, or right then they can choke on the cigarette butts. And overall, this is a problem that we see, or the smoking epidemic. It's killing millions of people every year. It's not just bad for the smoker. It's bad for the families, the friends, and people around. The government has put in good things in place to help people stop and to slow the public smoking. But I believe that with people's help, students, and other community members, we as a society can help stop the smoking epidemic. But it's important to start talking to people, especially with older parents or grandparents that smoke habitually and have smoked most of their lives, if not all of their lives. It's important to approach people with respect. So as I ask you to start these conversations, whether it's with friends, family, to do it respectfully. It's important to understand that it is an addiction, and it's something their bodies have gotten so used to that they can't see living without. But through nicotine patches, nicotine gum, it's easier to wean yourself off of that. It's also important to have support. So the support groups through the government are good, and they can help. Community where you know people, maybe through a church or through a school program, those are good too. But it's also important as a family member to support them, to let them know that you're there, to give them something else to do. A lot of times it can be an oral or physical fixation where they have to feel like they have to have something in their hands. As I mentioned, vapes are a low nicotine supplement, and some people choose to do. I've had several friends who have gone from smoking cigarettes to just vapes and eventually stopped altogether. That can really help certain people, and it's not an extremely expensive option. And they also have flavors that can accompany that, so it's not the smell of a cigarette, which is often disputting to family members. But being supportive, approaching them with the facts that it is harmful not only to them, or to people around them, it's also harmful to the environment. All three of these factors can be helpful whenever you're trying to persuade someone who's been smoking their whole life that they need to stop. And I hope that you've learned all the negative effects of smoking, and you can see why it is important for everyone in our communities to make an effort to stop this epidemic of smoking.